Hello and welcome to Payment Orchestration, Redefining the Merchant Experience with IXOPAY and PaymentsOP. My name is Freddie. I'm the Communication and Content Manager at IXOPAY, and I will be moderating today's webinar. During this event, our speakers will be taking a closer look at payments orchestration, what it is, how it works, and why it is such a game-changing tool for merchants' payment setup. There will be a short Q&A section at the end, so if you have any questions, please put them in the chat. Only I will be able to see them and it will be kept anonymous. There will also be polls throughout the webinar. Again, this will be anonymous and none of the participants will be able to see how you answered. I will quickly introduce our speakers and then we can begin. So Karen has over 20 years experience in the e-commerce area. She's worked for large internet companies and acquiring banks. As CEO of PaymentsOP, she works with merchants to find optimal solutions for their payment stack, as well as implementing tailor-based risk management systems for fraud detection and prevention. Our second speaker is my colleague Adam, Vice President of Business Development and Sales at IXOPAY. Adam has 20 years experience within the software sector, focusing strongly on customer experience. He has an unparalleled understanding of what's needed to provide a payment platform that will give us users flexibility, connectivity, and scalability. I will now pass over to Adam, who will begin with a brief explanation of what payment orchestration is. So Adam, if you could show yourself.
Thank you very much, Freddie, for the kind introduction. To everyone joining us today for this webinar. I'm also very happy to have the fantastic Karen Aviasaf with me today to drop some serious payments knowledge. What we're going to be talking about today is payments orchestration, broadly speaking, but specifically from the point of view of the merchant and how it helps merchants improve, scale, optimize their payments processes. And you may be asking yourself, what is a payments orchestration platform? What is this new term, payments orchestration, that has arisen in the industry over the last couple of years? The fundamental aspect of a payments orchestration platform is that it is a purely technical platform, independent of any particular financial services providers, what is sometimes referred to as a provider agnostic platform. But in terms of the functionality it covers, it is the equivalent of PSP technology stack. So we are putting really a multi-tool of payments processing in the hands of merchants directly and enable them to gain greater oversight, greater control, and greater optimization over all of their payments process. I will focus on my parts of the presentation on the bits and pieces of a payments orchestration platform, how to select them, common pitfalls. But I would like to start by handing over to Karen, who will share some insights about payments orchestration in practice with large merchants.
Okay, so thank you, Adam. I'm very happy to be here with you, and thank you for the IXOPAY team for inviting me to join this wonderful webinar. I think payment orchestration systems are kind of new in the market from the past 2 to 3 years. And they're definitely wonderful, and it's a good time to talk about them. I will talk mostly about the merchant's experience and how they can leverage their activity by using payment orchestration systems. But before I do that, I just want to start with my own personal experience when it comes to payment orchestration systems. So I think the first one that I met was maybe 3 years ago. And for the ones that don't know me, I was working for 20 years now as a payment and risk manager for different organizations, different global and online organizations before I joined and founded PaymentsOP. And the first time I saw these systems, I was so excited because this was like my dream system. Everything that I wanted to have as a payment manager working for organizations was there inside this wonderful system. So for me, it was like, I don't know, like winning a lottery in a way. The day-to-day job of a payment manager is very complex. It's full of a lot of challenges, and a lot of times it's very unrewarding, should I say. So the payment manager needs to manage a lot of processes, a lot of people and tools, a lot of back office systems, and to run different projects in parallel connected to the processing. And at the same time, he needs to do that with different technologies, different back office tools, sometimes work with a lot of Excel files, and manage all the relationship that he needs to handle internally and externally. So this is kind of a very complex position. And if you need to manage a lot of systems at once, then you become less efficient, and then the processes are less optimized. So this is why I was so glad to see that we have the ability to work with one system that have everything inside. While payment infrastructure usually is left behind because the focus is more on the product and marketing, then now we have technologies also for the payment managers themselves. So this is very exciting. We will have a few polls, we will have a few case studies, and I want to start with the first poll and ask you a very general question. Freddie, maybe you can help me here. Oh, here it comes. So from all players in the e-commerce ecosystem, who do you think should use payment orchestrations? Is it the acquirers, the issuers, the payment service providers, the online merchants, the e-wallets, or maybe the marketplaces? We're going to have a few more minutes to see. Answers are coming and also presented in social media, by the way. Okay, it's coming. All right, I'm kind of surprised to see that the most dominant answer is online merchants, since historically these systems were mostly by use of the payment service providers and some of the acquirers. But this is nice to know that today merchants are looking into payment orchestration systems and view them as something to work with. So moving from here, I will move to the case study number 1 that I wanted to discuss. I will not be able to share details like about our customers, but I will be able to share like the general methodology of everything that we do. So first I want to start with ISVs, like independent service vendors that move into payment facilitation models. We see that in the market as kind of a new trend. I want to explain first that independent software vendors can come from different verticals in the market. When I talk about them, we can see a lot of vendors, for instance, that offer CRM capabilities. We can see any management softwares, maybe for hotels or for restaurants or for anything in the market. So this is a basic vendor that gives software. It can be either B2B or B2C or P2P to anything that they want to handle to a specific vertical usually. So payment facilitation, these are kind of entities like maybe Stripe and Braintree that give payment services to a lot of businesses and online merchants in the market. Now, payment facilitations, as we call PayFac in short, has grown in popularity in the last couple of years. We see many payment solution providers or acquirers that have moved or added the PayFac capability into their processing capabilities. Now, most of the PayFacs kind of underestimate the strength of the underwriting process when it comes to ISVs that are moving into payment facilitation. And then when they want to process and need complex operations, they need to understand that they need to have some kind of underwriting and risk management infrastructure. Now, worldwide, we know if we look at the B2B or B2C, it doesn't really matter. We see that these platforms facilitate a chunk of a lot of transactions, but they do not make money over these transactions. So in the past years, they realized that they want to be also in the process of the payment in order for them to increase the revenues. Now, in order to do that, they need to take some liability. It can be either financial liability or it can be either compliance liability. But in order to do that, they need the tools. So this is when the payment orchestration systems comes into place. Now, PayFacs, as I said, like Stripe, today are willing to share a portion of the payment processing revenues and are willing to offer some kind of a hybrid model for these ISVs where they wouldn't have to necessarily move into payment facilitation model, but they will be able to enjoy the benefits of the revenue stream that they can see. So this is kind of a combined model that is quite in use today, and we see that with some of the very big companies that are working in this format, and they have many merchants and sub-merchants under them. But in order to them for fully utilize this revenue stream model, they need the tools. So one option for them is to become a full PayFac and to become like a banking solutions. But a lot of times they just want to enjoy the revenue stream without becoming a real PayFac. So the underwriting process usually is very long. So this is why they hold themselves sometimes from becoming a full PayFac. And also PayFacs are responsible most for the chargebacks and fraud and everything connected to the compliance with the card associations. Now, integrated payments like we have in the payment orchestration systems can be and usually are a better choice for most of the ISVs. They can use these systems in order to manage wisely everything connected with onboarding the merchants, everything connected with managing the day-to-day risk management, securities, and also to do some profiling for the merchants and the customers that are running inside the systems. So using a payment orchestration platform allows them actually to do best practices underwriting and monitoring policies and manage all the processes in one place. These capabilities can, from one hand, give them the peace of mind that they need in order to be successful in the business. And from the other hand, they have everything like in one technological platform and one connection. So examples for the capabilities that payment orchestration systems gives that are needed to actually manage this day-to-day activity. The first one, and a very important one, is the Know Your Customer or Know Your Business capabilities and tools. These systems a lot of times include also a wizard where you can build the forms. The forms will ask specific and very basic details from all the vendors that are coming inside the platform. And also the payment orchestration platforms can be connected to external tools that will be able to do the authentication process for all the data that they need to ask from their sub-merchants. So this is one capability which is very strong and very important for a business offering this type of model. Second one, we can see a risk rules engine. They can use the payment orchestration platform and configure different risk rules. They can screen the transactions and they can monitor their transactions and see that they have protected volume running via the system. This capability, if they don't have it, they need to either integrate to some tools in the market that offer this kind of capabilities, and they need also to have some kind of an internal mechanism in order to understand which rule will be stronger than the other one and to come to a conclusion about each one of the transaction. So this is very comfortable when it comes in one place, in one platform. Also, we have, as I said, velocity, deposit limits, and everything that they need to do in order to screen negative transactions. We have, of course, the dashboards and the customized reports. This is very important for the analysis that comes after that. And this can be quite helpful if you have everything under one consolidated view. So before we move to the next case study, I just want to summarize this. For any ISVs or like complex merchants that consider to come into payment facilitation model, they should ask themselves whether the payments is really embedded in the current processes. And if not, but they still want to do this process, they should consider to work with one of the payment orchestration systems that are in the market. Now, a few of these ISVs bodies, we can identify them in the market as marketplaces. We're all aware of a lot of marketplaces that are out there. We are all aware of, let's say, Fiverr and Get and Uber. and a lot of other marketplaces that are operating in the market. Now, to operate a marketplace can be quite complex if you don't have the internal infrastructure. You need to operate the pay-in from the buyers, you need to operate the payout to the sellers, to the vendors, and this can be quite overwhelming for some of the entities that are out there. So usually when we come and meet marketplaces, when they want to consult us, then they would tell us that the platforms is very product oriented. And although they can tell that they have high volume of transactions going inside this platform, they will never see themselves as actual banks. So this is why they have a different view on how they want to operate the processes. Usually they handle like hundreds of procedures, but sometimes they don't have all the technology and infrastructure and processing that they actually need in order to do the pay-in, the payout, and all the billing that they need to do on the day-to-day basis. And they have to get it right because in many times they take some kind of a liability over all the transactions that they processed. And if there is any misunderstanding between the buyers and the sellers, then we have the platform standing in the middle and need to either compensate or manage all these frictions that they have inside the platform. So they can remain sometimes unprofitable, sometimes they can get into insolvency. So one of the features that they need to handle on a day-to-day basis is actually the balance management. They are taking transactions from the customers that are buying services from the vendors that are inside the platform. They need to manage these balances on a proper way. It's kind of creates a ledger of transactions that they need to supervise and monitor. They will take their share from the balance that they have inside the platform. And then based on different models, payment models, they will transfer the money to the vendors. Now, if you think on different payment models that these marketplaces should operate according to, so we can identify in the market a few examples like that. We see sometimes this is kind of the simplest model. A percentage of the transaction will be passed from the buyer to the vendor. Sometimes we see a percentage of a group of transaction from different customers that will be paid for a vendor, not necessarily transaction per transaction, but based on a group of these. We see sometimes fixed amounts on each transaction that is paid to the vendors or to the affiliates. We have a percentage of up to maybe a minimum or up to a maximum amount to be transferred. And sometimes we even have different time scheduling, different currencies that can make things even more complex. So for a marketplace or any business that wants to manage all these kind of challenging infrastructure to pay the vendors, usually it's best to have one system that can utilize everything, that can have all the information inside and help him kind of to share everything and to pay properly to the vendors. And using a payment orchestration system usually allows the business to operate properly, to optimize everything inside, and naturally to oversight and monitor all the funds that they have inside the marketplace. Now, before we move to the next case study, I want to ask you something more. So we're going to have poll number 2. Let us see. So let's ask the audience, what will be in your view, like the optimal number of card acquirers a merchant should work with? Is it 1 acquirer, 2 acquirers, as many as possible? Any other answer that you have in mind? Okay, maybe 3, maybe as many as possible. Okay, so actually there isn't any correct answer for this question. It's a tricky one. And a lot of the customers that we come to work with and advise them, they ask us, what is the number that we should work with, or from what volume we should add another acquirer to work with. And there is no correct answer for that. Like we usually say it depends. It depends on the target markets that you work with. It depends on the business model that you have. It depends on the volume that you have today and the predicted volume that you might have at the end of the year or the next year. And it also depends where the company is incorporated and how many entities you have. So this leads me to the case study number 3, and I'm going to talk a bit about how to optimize and how to scale the merchant global processing. And this is directly connected to the number of the acquirers or payment solution providers that a merchant is working with, because many times we see that they work with a few payment solution providers. But once they do direct integrations with each one of them, they will need something behind the scenes to operate and to manage all this routing between the different bank and payment solutions. So the use of payment orchestration platforms for global merchants can help them to manage working with different payment solutions, working in different areas of the world, working in different currencies, optimizing and scaling their processing capabilities, and actually managing day-to-day operation and also the strategy that they want to handle worldwide. So we know today that these systems can help businesses, global merchants, to streamline the payments operation in one place. It's very crucial when they need to operate a lot of volume, and they need to be very efficient and to identify trends, to identify problems or drops in the volumes and analyze it. We know that they can scale pretty much easily. They can do localization because they have a lot of solution providers already connected in one place. It's shortened dramatically the time to market. And also, we know for sure that these systems can help the merchant to increase the approval rates, to manage the success rates of the transactions, to be able to process more transactions and to get more approvals. If they are able to identify the best acquirers to send the transaction through, they can do pre-processing and post-processing optimization. And usually all the tools to manage this are coming inside a module of a smart routing that is a part of all the payment orchestration systems that we know and that we studied. Usually the best way to handle it is to see where will be the best place for the transaction to be processed, like statistically, to check the cost of the fees that we pay for the different banks, and to check whether we have some kind of chargeback issues with one of the banks. So we would want to optimally send the transaction to the place that we have the higher success rates, the lower fees, and if we have risk management issues, then we need to push more volume there. So this is something that the payment orchestration systems offer, and they have a lot of capabilities there. We're able also to choose transactions according to maybe volume to be sent to a specific bank. We can send transactions from different customers, like maybe VIPs we want to transfer to one of the banks. We can route it per the origin of the customer, per the country, per the region. And we can do a lot of things inside. And usually it's a very powerful engine, the smart routing engine. It's most powerful than any merchant can build by itself. Another thing that we already discussed, but it's also connected to the global merchants, is obviously the monitoring capabilities, the insights, and everything is a consolidated view that you can see all the transactions coming from the different banks, the different service providers. You can monitor them, you can have dashboards, you can have reports customized reports and specific APIs that you can monitor, and it's very critical for the day-to-day activity of the merchant. Also, from another angle, if you want to have multiple integrations, a lot of time it's very expensive regarding technological resources and operational resources to maintain. So here you have everything in one place. This is, of course, as we said, it's aggregating all the data, and you don't need to work with different portals of different banks and aggregate everything. Sometimes we see companies we do very high volumes working eventually with Excel files. It's very frustrating, it's inefficient, and it's very hard to actually view everything properly and analyze the trends and the problems that you might experience as a merchant. And also working with a system like that can reduce the expenses and the cost and minimize all the technical resources that you need. You can actually have an all-in-one payment solution. Also, as a takeout from this case study, I should say that payment is not a commodity. We don't have a plug-and-play solution out there in the market that you can tell, this is my business, this is my population, I'm incorporated here, and then just process my payments. We don't have something like that, but payment is more of a proficiency. And if you need someone to work and to have the knowledge and to be able to take the knowledge and the methodology and put it in the day-to-day use, then you better give him a system that will allow him to do it properly. Now, before I hand out to Adam to continue, I just want to end with a third poll that we have for you today. Okay, so let's see what you think or what you know based on your own experience. What will be like the average time to integrate a new payment solution providers? Is it more into 5 days, 2 weeks, 3 months, 6 months? I guess we can have even more than 6 months, but let's stay into this frame. Oh, we have a diverse crowd here. Okay, so 3 months, mostly 3 months, I see. Okay. So I should say that usually to do the API integration itself to a new payment service providers, it's a matter of days. Like this can be done in days because it's not very complex. But when we check with the customers themselves, they report usually that it takes between 3 to 6 months. And why this is happening? Usually not because of the API to the payment solution provider, but more into the massive customization that they need to do in their internal systems and back offices. So I let Adam continue to explain how payment orchestration can really help to mitigate this pain and to help configure and integrate with more banks in a very shortened time period. So back to you, Adam.
I learned a couple of new things today on payments being a proficiency and not a commodity. I think I'll use it again today. So when we're looking at the challenges that merchants are addressing specifically with payments orchestration, I think we had a couple of momentous events over the last 12 years that maybe all help to illustrate certain domains where payments orchestration could add value or could help you deal with such events. And looking as said at the last 12 months, I mean, we've all been impacted, of course, by the corona pandemic. For some merchants, this meant that a sales channel that was maybe a single-digit percentage of their sales, 5, 6, 7, 10%, suddenly became 100% of their sales. They had to switch completely to e-com because of lockdowns. So, not being ready to do that or having to do that in a very short time frame, of course, put a lot of merchants in difficult positions, small as well as large ones. And those that had prepared ahead of time to be more flexible in their payment setup were, of course, better equipped to deal with this situation. The gentleman in the middle may be familiar to some of you. You've probably heard the news last summer about what happened to Wirecard. This also put a lot of sometimes very large organizations, very large merchants in a tight spot in a very short notice period. So within a couple of weeks after the news breaking, a lot of companies were urgently looking for new payment service providers because it was just not clear who could jump in and fill the gap. So, a good example of things that can happen in the payment space on very short notice with no forewarning that affects you if you are not ready to deal with these kind of situations. And PSD2, which I don't want to talk about too much because it's been following us for years now, but with its coming into force this year, of course, it has also placed a lot of merchants in front of challenges, also in specific geographies where maybe some players in the payments chain, specifically issuers, were not yet ready to fully implement strong customer authentication. So the nature of the payments industry is that it is dynamic, it is challenging, it is in constant flux, and it is important, therefore, for any type of merchant that seeks to really scale, not only locally, but globally, that it focuses on setting up a payments infrastructure that enables this scaling. Merchants wanting conversion, maximum conversion, and maximum revenues should really ask themselves, are they fast enough when it comes to entering new markets? What is their time to market? How long does it take them to integrate a new payment provider? Are they flexible enough? Can they react to local consumer preferences when they are entering a new market? Can they offer the right mix of methods? Can they dynamically fine-tune these methods to each individual customer that visits their website and not just offer a one-size-fits-all checkout to all clients? And also coming back to topics like payment providers imploding on short notice, are they resilient enough? What happens if suddenly one of your payment service providers kicks the proverbial bucket? So all of these topics, of course, add up to a lot of complexity from a systems perspective, from an organizational perspective, the processes that you have to implement, the oversight functions, the management functions. And that is sometimes a hugely complex topic. So thanks, Freddie, also for sharing the first poll in my part. One question that I would like to ask here is, from what you've heard about payment orchestration so far, why would you think merchants or businesses generally need payment orchestration? What is it that they're looking for? Of course, you could break my heart as a salesperson for a payments orchestration vendor and say nobody needs payments orchestration, but I'm happy to see no one answered that. Independence is, of course, a big topic, time to market, or the centralization, consolidation of the payment setup. So I'm looking at some answers. Centralization is definitely coming out ahead. I do think independence is a big topic, and we'll get to that over the next couple of slides. Let's look at what it is that a payments orchestration platform typically covers by looking at a schematic of a sample payments orchestration setup. So in this particular schematic, what we've represented on the left side are the applications, the line of business applications in the domain of the merchant, from their e-com platform through which they sell their goods or their services, maybe one or more ERP systems that they use for fulfillment of orders, and especially for large merchants that are organized across different countries, different regions in the world. They will often have local organizations, of course, local merchant accounts with local providers, and maybe their own set of line of business applications, which is why we have multiple ERPs here. So dealing, of course, with multiple payment providers makes the situation kind of complicated. In Some countries you may connect, as in this example, to let's say WorldPay and Adyen as examples. In another country, country 2 here, you may be using Ingenico for credit cards and WorldPay for something different than credit cards, maybe some sort of wallet product. One thing that is also represented here, one of the complexities in the payments world that payment orchestration platforms are set to address, is that sometimes very large PSPs, very large payment facilitators offer multiple platforms for a variety of different reasons, historical reasons, growing through acquisitions, legacy platforms still being in use. That's why here in this example, we have WorldPay with 2 different endpoints. So what we're trying to represent in a payments orchestration platform, what we're trying to achieve is to provide a single entry point for all transactions, so that my e-com platform as a merchant only needs to speak with one system, the POP, sends transactions to the POP, and have a centralized approach in the payments orchestration platform for mitigating risk, for making a smart routing decision, determining the ideal provider and endpoint for each particular transaction. And then, of course, handling the post-processing flows, so the data that comes back from the provider, the settlement reports, and presenting that in an appropriate format back to the different ERP systems. So basically, everything that is listed here in the payments orchestration side, so in the central part of the slide, is something that many merchants have built themselves organically over time. Sometimes it reaches an incredible amount of complexity. One client that we're working with today is present in more than 200 countries with around 60 different payment providers. And you can imagine that maintaining such a system and having central visibility becomes very, very difficult if it has just been built bit by bit over the last 20 years. So that is really the challenge or the problem that we seek to address with payment orchestration platforms. When we look at the key milestones in payment orchestration projects, I think it's important here also when we're talking about the merchant experience to really have a realistic look at the topic. There is, of course, a number of things that I need to do in order to successfully execute a payments orchestration project. There is a lot of preliminary work, which is often, especially if your payment setup is complex, has evolved over a long time, difficult to do, but crucial to the success of the project. The first, and it sounds easy, but sometimes it can be very complicated, is to have a complete catalog, a complete documentation of all of the providers that you work with and the specifics of your relationships with these providers. So which technical endpoints are you currently connected to? Which methods are you using per provider? Do you still have a copy of the contract and the pricing with those providers? And what are any internal processes that you currently have that are related potentially to this particular provider or set of providers? This is an often underestimated part of doing a payments orchestration project. A second important part is to really identify and again catalog any sort of third-party data silos. So these could be tokenized credit cards of your end customers that are maybe distributed across multiple providers. So to understand, okay, where is that data actually located? And any other auxiliary applications that are currently integrated in the payments flow. These could be risk management applications. These could be applications that are used for dunning of customers, for example, to really have a clearer picture of all the systems and where is the data currently. And last but not least, in terms of preliminary activities, to really understand within your line of business applications, your ERP systems, your CRM systems, order management systems, whatever they may be that need to be in touch with payments data. What are the formats that these systems need to receive payments reconciliation data, payments settlement data, and what transport mechanisms are at my disposal to get that data from the payments orchestration platform to the target system. So once you've done this kind of work, you're in a good position to start a vendor selection process. So to have a look at the different platforms that are out there, to start mapping the functionality that the different vendors offer to your specific requirements, and more importantly, even to map the connectivity that the vendors offer. So what providers are they currently integrated with, but also which platforms within these providers are they currently integrated with. Another important aspect of the vendor selection is, of course, to evaluate any dependencies of each individual provider. Are they part of a larger technology group? Are they relying on specific financial services institutions? Do they have technical dependencies to services that may be a problem for your business? One experience that we've made, for example, is that in the retail domain, many large retailers have an issue working with Amazon services, for example. And this may vary, of course, from one merchant to another, but it's something that you need to have a clear picture of when you are selecting a payments orchestration vendor. And of course, my favorite topic personally, you need to talk commercials, and more importantly, the service level agreement that these platform vendors are ready or willing to negotiate with you, simply because by definition, almost, payment orchestration platforms become a single point of failure for your payments potentially. So this is something that needs to be evaluated very carefully, whether it suits your requirements, and negotiated if need be. And then, of course, once you've selected payments orchestration vendors, we move on to the implementation. We had a question before about the average time to integrate a new payment service provider, and I'll get to that also in a little bit of time. But as Karen mentioned, on a payments orchestration platform, most of the work that you do during the implementation, if not all of the work, is actually configuration. So you are getting an off-the-shelf application that is flexible and that lets you really configure behavior of the system without requiring any additional development. What you do need to do on your end as a merchant is, of course, to integrate your front-end application, your e-com platforms, your apps with the payments orchestration platform, so with the transactional API that it offer, and of course, make sure that you integrate your line of business applications with the payments orchestration platform, so that an ERP system can receive a payment confirmation or can send a capture transaction when an order is shipped, for example. And before you go live, of course, you need to take care of any related data migration aspects, so transfer any existing tokens that you have from your customers, from your PSPs into the POP, and migrate your customer database also. So these are the key milestones that we see in any project. And I said, I think one of the really most critical parts is what is listed here on the preliminary work bullet points. If every merchant would do this diligently before initiating a project, I think a lot of implementation projects would be very, very fast. So to the question of, how long does it take to integrate a payments orchestration platform, I said we saw here 3 to 6 months. And I would say, based on our experience with large organizations, with large merchants, that this is roughly the time or the time frame that we see between a contract being signed and a customer going live with our platform. But I would still recommend every merchant to approach these kind of projects as an opportunity to really not only consolidate your payments flows, but also to rationalize and to understand, well, if you're approaching this kind of project after just building a payments infrastructure bit by bit over 15 years, maybe there is optimization potential. Maybe you don't need 60 payment providers, maybe you can deal with 30, and that would still help. So there is, the potential here to really optimize further, and that should really be taken when you are approaching these kind of projects. And what is also important is, to ensure speedy implementation of such projects is to have really a dedicated project team. So overall, is it the same as integrating a PSP? As we know, I mean, Karen said it, and I can confirm, just the technical integration can take a couple of days. In a payments orchestration project, you will be looking at 3 to 6 months, potentially at higher initial costs, because you are looking at your entire payment setup, not simply adding another provider, but you see ROI in the very short term. So it's definitely worth the investment here. So what are, also some of the pitfalls that we see, or, where maybe market expectations towards payment orchestration platforms are not really aligned with reality, or where more care should be taken when you are approaching these kind of projects. The first here is that, having a payments orchestration platforms does not mean that you do not have to deal with payment service providers. What it enables you to do is to focus really on the relationship, on the commercials, on the capabilities, and not have to worry about the technical side of the integration. That is the value here of the payments orchestration platform, but it is still your relationship with the payment service providers. You need acquiring contracts with the banks that you're working with, and this is something that you need to actively manage. Now, of course, a payments orchestration platform also gives you a certain amount of leverage, so it's something that will help you optimize these relationships and maybe get the most out of your existing or prospective service providers. Another very common pitfall when selecting a payments orchestration platform is that connectivity. So, the different PSPs, acquirers, APMs that a payments orchestration platform can work with is really more than just a list of names, right? If I would tell you we're integrated with WorldPay, you might very well ask me, well, which WorldPay? Because to our knowledge, WorldPay has 5 or 6 platforms that is offering to different types of merchants in different regions of the world. And this is something that is true for very many providers out there. So it's really important to not just look at brands, at names, but looking at technical capabilities, also because different merchant platforms with the PSPs will often differ in terms of the capabilities that they offer, in terms of sometimes the settlement formats that they return, in terms of the methods that they cover. So it's really important here to have a very close look, first at what you are currently using, what you're looking to use, but also at the details of each integration that a payments orchestration platform pretends to have. And the third, and probably the most important pitfall, right, is that similarly to the fact that the payments orchestration platform does not absolve you from managing PSPs, these are expert platforms. You need, skilled, knowledgeable platform owners within your organization, what Karen very rightly referred to as, a proficiency that you need to have. So my general approach here is, if I see someone, a large merchant coming to me saying, well, we're interested in payments orchestration, but they don't have a payments focused role within their organization. The project is maybe IT driven, treasury is maybe a better fit, but if you don't have an expert on this kind of platform, then I would advise you to start looking for one, or call the wonderful Karen Aviazaf, because she can probably help you out. That is definitely one of the most critical success factors. And it's also why we see a lot of large merchants that are growing, actively hiring professionals from the payments industry. So where payment professionals are switching sides to kind of the merchant universe, to bring in their knowledge, because it is simply a very intricate topic with a lot of secret knowledge, let's say, that you can gain only through years of experience. So these are the kind of users that payment orchestration platforms are typically designed to cater to and that you need on your team. And if we now look at a couple of use cases, I'm also conscious of time. What can we help merchants with in payments orchestration? So transaction routing, smart routing, there's many names for it, is of course a hallmark of payments orchestration platforms. It applies mostly to credit card transactions, to bank transfers, so direct debit transactions. And here, of course, as Karen mentioned also, the goal is always higher authorization rates, lower fees. I want failover capability. I want to maybe spread my risk across multiple providers. And that's why, the most typical routing strategies that we see are things such as local acquiring, load balancing, A/B testing between providers, failover or cascading, which are very similar types of strategies, or even risk-based routing, where I'm saying, well, maybe I want to distribute my transaction according to the perceived risk for transactions, individual transactions or sets of transactions. So what I would say here is there is not a one-size-fits-all approach, right? Your strategy has to be individual to your business, to the markets that you're operating in, the kind of product that you're selling, and the providers that you're working with. Risk management consolidated on one platform is also very useful, simply because every PSP offers risk management functionality, but in a slightly different way. But when you scale globally, you really need to improve on these practices. You want to consolidate, you want to apply a uniform set of rules, or as uniform as possible, to all transactions that are going through your system, regardless of the target PSP. You want to be able to do these risk checks before the payment transaction actually lands at the acquirers, at the PSPs, on the PSP sides, or even hits the schemes. That is a crucial aspect in mitigating problems down the road. You want to be able to also consolidate the management of 3DS. So when do you challenge? When do you request an exemption? And of course, if needed, you also want to be able to easily integrate and orchestrate specialized third-party fraud solutions. So here, payments orchestration platforms, at least complete ones, will also offer a proprietary set of risk tools with checks covering all the typical risk management practices that are common in this industry. And last but not least, reconciliation. As said, if you work with multiple providers, 3, 4, 5, 10, 60, it also means that you have to deal with a lot of different formats, a lot of different rhythms. When do you receive settlements? What kind of settlement is it? How do you fetch this data? And then reconciling all of this data with your order management system, your ERP systems, becomes a huge challenge. So where payment orchestration platforms can really help is by, again, consolidating, verifying settlement data, and enabling the scheduling of reconciliation with your line of business applications through configuration. What we actually see in payments orchestration projects is that this is often one of the biggest drivers of ROI, because it is usually one of the least automated functions within back office teams or treasury teams. And it's usually one where there is a lot of technical complexity on the side of systems that are classically expensive to maintain, such as ERP solutions. So definitely something.
I'm just going to stop you there, because we've had quite a few questions come in, and I'm just conscious of time. So it would be great if we could get them answered.
Sorry.
Karen, if you could turn your camera and mic back on, and then we can get to it. So one of the questions that we had is it possible to transfer my tokens from my individual payment providers to a payment orchestration platform?
Adam, you go ahead. It's your favorite topic.
I've been talking so much. I'm sorry. I should have looked at the time, but I was almost through. So yes, it is absolutely possible. This is, one of the typical implementation steps in a payments orchestration project, and it's also, what will fundamentally enable you to then later shift volume from one provider to another. So definitely, a key function of any payments orchestration platform is a provider agnostic vaulting capability, and migrating your existing tokens to the platform is a key part.
Freddie, I want to add to that because there's something very important about the one tokenization mechanism that is being used by the payment orchestration platform. Because many times if you work with different banks, then you have different tokens with different banks. And then you cannot really move the transaction between the banks. Sometimes you need to move the customers between the banks. You're not able to do that. So by using the token mechanism of a payment orchestration system, you can actually stay independent on the banks themselves, and you can then do a lot of things that you are not able to do if you're working directly with different banks. So this is also worth mentioning.
Merchant be confident in the technical ability of a payment orchestration platform, as they need to route their whole payment operation through one business?
This is a very, very good question. Of course, one of the key objections that I'm always faced with in my role. My first question back would be, well, how many people do you have working on payments in-house? And are you confident in your ability to provide a better service level for whichever layer you have built? The second answer I would give is that any serious provider worth their salt has certain architectural patterns in place, has certain organizational structures in place to ensure 24/7 monitoring of the platform, being able to quickly identify and resolve issues. And I would say from a merchant perspective, from a client perspective, the best way to get the truth on these kind of questions is to speak with other clients. That is what I would recommend to anyone. Don't take it from me, a salesperson. Speak with other clients and see what they have to say. And I think that at the end that will help you better judge the seriousness, I would say, of any particular provider. What I would also say is that, of course, payments, as many things on the internet, is a very interconnected ecosystem with a lot of different moving bits and pieces, and a lot of those are not under the control of any one provider, right? So failures can occur on many different sides, and it's important to keep that in mind when you are designing your own systems, to also build some resilience into those processes.
Yes, absolutely. And I think that Adam and myself were asked in the past several times these questions, and we always give this answer, which is the most correct one, by the way. And I also always tell them, listen, the probability that your systems will experience a downtime is much higher than the probability of a payment orchestration systems to have downtime, because this is the main business that these systems operate. Like, they have all the resources, the technology, and the engineers to be able to support you like 99% point, I don't know, a few nine after that. So I think that once you choose these systems, you should make sure that they're able to support you and are able to support your volumes.
And another question, is payment orchestration limited to large organizations that operate in multiple countries?
I would say, this is definitely something that is changing. I would say that, especially in the COVID times now, where also smaller merchant SMEs have been maybe hit disproportionately hard. by the current situation. Expanding their business online has been a key priority, but for them it is often difficult to gain leverage. It is often difficult for them to quickly enter new markets, to try and find new buyers, maybe in other countries. So what we are seeing, and what we are also working on with IXOPAY, is providing fast onboarding, so solutions that are more applicable to even smaller merchants that want to rely maybe on multiple providers. I would say the focus could be a bit different. It could be adding more methods quickly, rather than optimizing the transaction fees that I have on card payments. But there is definitely this need here, and there are solutions out there that fulfill this need.
Yes, I should also say that like if the merchant is operating in a very simple model, let's say he's operating from one market, he's selling only into a local market, and he has a very mainstream product, let's say. So probably this will be an overkill to his needs. So he doesn't need a payment orchestration platform. But as long as he's working like globally in different markets, as long as he's working on different models, if he's moving to become a marketplace or a payment facilitator, or maybe handling balance management, e-wallets, anyone that has a complex operation can use and actually should use this type of technology.
Well, thank you very much, both of you. I'm going to call time because we are now at the hour. So thank you, Adam, and thank you, Karen. And thank you, everybody, for joining and asking your questions. We will be posting this webinar on our website as well, and we'll send out the announcement on social media. So please do follow us. Thank you very much. Bye.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Karen.
Bye. Thank you, guys.
Bye-bye.